A lot can happen in a week. Some of it good, some of it bad, some of it downright ugly. When faced with intriguing developments in the week's news, we turn to a rotating panel of non-experts to parse the good, the bad, and the ugly of it all. On today's panel, Raul Ramos, Associate Professor of History at the University of Houston, and Charles Kuffner, who writes the Off the Cuff political blog. Raul, Charles, welcome to Houston Matters.
Thank you for having me.
Panel, as we discussed on Wednesday's show, the latest NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll offers the usual numbers about the presidential race, some findings on those wedge issues political parties like to seize on each election year, but it also found more consensus among Americans about some issues and ideas than you might have previously thought, and signs we may not be quite so stuck in ideological bubbles. Among the findings, 84% of respondents oppose legal action against someone who's had an abortion. 79% oppose using violence to get the nation back on track, however they define that. 75% oppose granting a president immunity for crimes committed while in office. And 75% oppose religious influence on government policy. 72% say corporate greed is a major cause of inflation. 71% say President Biden was the legitimate winner of the 2020 election. And 68% say the American dream, however they define it, is still attainable. And as for those bubbles, 81% of respondents say they have friends with different political beliefs than their own. Maybe Americans agree on just a little bit more than we thought. Maybe. Is this good, bad, or ugly? Raul Ramos.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that we're not about to have a civil war in this country? Is that the takeaway from these poll figures?
This would be very bad news for a movie coming out called Civil War, but yeah, maybe that's what we're getting at here.
And I think that's right. The reason we expect more conflict or more disagreement is conflict and disagreement and fear sell. They bring viewers, listeners, they rally voters. And so I think these figures are a good balance to seeing that there are legitimate areas of disagreement, but that there is agreement. I think one of the figures that you didn't list that I just read yesterday is that I think there's somewhere in the 98% of Americans believe that voting should be more accessible, or that voting is a right. For some of these questions, the details of what that means and how that becomes policy, I think, is where the devil's in the details in many ways. But really, the areas of extreme conflict are not as prevalent, I would say. But we see them so much more because, they bring voters out, they bring viewers in. You see fear becoming a selling point, I think, in the past than, say, what was Michelle Obama's "when they go low, we go high," right? That always rings in my ears when I hear folks going low. But we don't get much of that other side.
All right, good, bad, or ugly. Charles Kuffner.
I mean, it's a little bit of both. It's nice to see those numbers, but I don't know. From my perspective, as someone who's watched politics for a long time, they feel empty to me. I mean, to me, and Raul kind of touched on this a little bit, is if you are not backing up your beliefs by voting for people who share them, then I don't know that I believe that you actually believe that. If you believe that, for example, presidents don't have immunity for illegal acts, and then you go and vote for Donald Trump, I don't believe you. If you say that you don't want women who get an abortion to be punished or harmed, and you go voting for an attorney general who threatens to lock up doctors who would help a woman who is at an emergency room suffering from a failed pregnancy and just needs help getting it over with, or else she is at risk of dying, then I don't believe you. If you say that you are for example, as has always been the case in polling in Texas, if you say you are for sensible gun regulations and you vote for politicians who make it legal for people to carry assault weapons openly on the streets, in school zones, and at churches, then I don't believe you. It's easy to say you support those things. Show me that you actually do.
Panel, congrats are in order for Emmanuel Chavez from Tatamo, the lone James Beard Award finalist this year from Houston. Chavez is a finalist in the Best Chef Texas category, but he's the only one of 11 Houston area chefs and restaurants to advance from the semis in what Eric Sandler, the food editor from Culture Map Houston, calls a disappointing year for Houston chefs and restaurants in what's considered the Oscars of the food world. It's a quiet year for Houston restaurants and chefs in the James Beard Awards. Is this good, bad, or ugly? Charles.
I mean, it's fine. I mean, obviously it's not great. We'd rather have more people getting nominated, but it's a big country. There's a lot of places that have good food. It's okay for some other cities to have nominees some years. We're always going to be in the conversation. We'll do better next year. The fact that we only have one nominee on that this year is not a reflection on Houston's food scene. It's not a reflection on the talents or abilities of any of our local chefs or restaurateurs. It just wasn't our year. So it's all right. It's fine.
Okay, good, bad, or ugly. Raul.
I think there is a silver lining here, and that is, well, I'll ask y'all a question. Would you rather be overrated or underrated?
Oh, underrated,
right.
Obviously.
And so I think there is a tipping point. There is some point where if you just keep racking up the wins, then the expectations, maybe this is where we are, where maybe the expectations are higher for Houston. And so we're coming back to the mean in some ways. Hard to take 1 year data point. By the way, I love Tatemo. Not only is it incredibly creative and historically and culturally connected, it's really expanding the way Houstonians can experience food. And I'm excited that not only is that recognized locally, but that we're getting national recognition for his work. And so, again, I think in this case, it is a question of maybe this will set us up for even bigger returns in the future. I also do feel there's a little bit of location bias. I mean, maybe some of these reviewers don't want to visit Houston, or maybe would rather go to Austin or some other place. I know that Texas has become its own category in the James Beard Awards, and so I think that alone shows that we have a rich culinary culture in the region.
Panel, as we talked about on Tuesday's Houston Matters, the Texas Transportation Commission last week authorized TxDOT to end a more than 50-year contract with a private group to operate toll lanes along Highway 288. To get out of the deal just 8 years in, TxDOT's agreed to buy it back for $1.7 billion. That's with a B. The department believes it can raise more than that in the long run in tolls, though it's not clear just what the cost will ultimately be for drivers. As the Texas Observer's Josephine Lee told us, the 288 toll lanes currently can be as costly as $18 one way during peak hours. In a statement, TxDOT told Houston Matters the decision to authorize the ending of the contract is just a first step. TxDOT's going to have to pay through the nose to buy back the 288 toll lanes. Is this good, bad, or ugly? Raul.
Well, I think it shows the ugly side of infrastructure, and that is that we've privatized so much of it as a way to get it done, and then realize that maybe that some of these decisions, while in the short term seem easy, are costing us in the region. And really, I would say sort of public control and public say in our regional infrastructure as it goes along. So I think it's showing us the ugly side of handing the planning, construction, and management of public services to private corporations that are there for profit reasons. And sometimes profit motives don't align with regional growth models and the needs of our location. And you can apply this in other areas that are being privatized, but certainly to see a group like TxDOT go back on this, it shows that yes, I think in this case the rational engineers have won out and realized that there is another way of doing this that's more responsive to our needs. I hope. I've also seen TxDOT mess up the 59 610 interchange. So I don't know whose fault that is, but certainly I think in the long term having our regional say and public say in the management and the construction of our roads is always a good thing.
All right. Good, bad, or ugly? Charles.
Yeah, I basically agree with Raul here. I mean, it would be interesting to go back to when the decision was made to sell it or lease it or whatever it was to the private entity, and question, go back and question the people who did that and say, So what did you think was going to happen? What were your assumptions under this? Because either I assume, based on this, that TxDOT buying it back at this amount, whatever the assumptions were made for how financially viable this was going to be, that just didn't pan out. And now, maybe the conditions of the contract were such that, we got stuck with it. So point being, things that are public goods tend to be that for a reason. And, well, their usefulness and their existence don't necessarily align well with a profit motive. I mean, there's a reason why governments do some things and private entities do other things, because not everything is going to pay for itself. And that's perhaps a lesson that we needed to learn the hard way here. I guess it's good that we did.
Now we just need to come up with really great award-winning restaurants that are right there on the highway with you. Can that be done?
And charge people to vote for them.
There you go. Charles Kuffner writes the off-the-cuff political blog. Raul Ramos is an associate professor of history at the University of Houston. Charles, Raul, thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg.